In this episode of the Hello You Show, I sit down with Tara Landis and we talk about the importance of knowing when to ask for help, when to seek help, when running our business. This is an incredibly important episode for any successful business owner who is feeling like they're supposed to be doing it all and struggling to know when and how to let go. Make sure you tune in and listen to the full episode as she gives her tips and ideas on how you can start to streamline your business, as well as start to feel a little bit of hope in relation to how you grow, how you scale, and how you finally become the CEO that you've always wanted to be. Listen in. Hello, welcome back to the Hello You Show. My name is Jessica Rice, and I am your host. And today we are joined by a very special guest, Tara Landis, who is the founder of Bell Rock Benchmarking, a Canadian consulting firm specializing in solving complex business challenges and driving a lasting organizational change. With over 25 years of experience, she has advised 300 plus small business leaders and led 950 and more graduates through Bell Rock's management training programs. Tara holds an MBA from Ivy Business School, certifications in change management, Prosky, and is a licensed influence trainer with the Cialdini Institute. A dynamic speaker, she has presented for organizations like TEC Canada and engineers and geoscientists in British Columbia. Tara, I'm so excited to have you joining us today. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Jessica. What a great introduction.
Well, I'm curious to know, where are you joining us from today?
Today, I am in my home office in Vancouver, Canada. So we're just above Seattle here, and it is pouring rain as it often is.
Well, still very beautiful part of the country. So I know you have lots of trees and lots of mountains in Canada and so many wonderful, wonderful areas to go visit. Well, I know that you have this, incredible story and background, and I always love reading the bios, but I always love to hear from you. What is it that you do, how you help and serve people, in your industry?
Sure. Well, yeah, we're management consultants. So we work with small businesses typically, and we help them by embedding a consultant in their environment. So that means actually even having a desk there sometimes, and working shoulder to shoulder with the management team to help put in systems and processes that will get them to whatever their goals happen to be. We've been doing this for, as you said, about 25 years, working with these different managers and teams on all of their toughest issues, whether it be organizational change or financial controls, sales process. It really runs the gamut, but it's all about putting in foundational systems that they can build upon.
Well, I can only imagine how helpful that is, especially for business owners who really are just embarking and trying to figure out how to run a successful company. Can you tell us what got you into this line of work? How did you begin here?
Yeah, it's a great question. When I finished university, I had a political science degree, which didn't really qualify me to for any particular job. And I ended up getting a job in telephone sales after a couple of false starts. And I enjoyed it, but I knew that that was not going to be my career. And so everyone had always told me that I should go to law school because I like to debate and I have strong opinions. And I wrote at the LSAT, and that was interesting. Unfortunately, I then found, after I wrote the LSAT, I then met a lawyer. I had never spoken to a lawyer, and I said, "What's lawyering like?" And they told me that I would have to work 80 hours a week for $40,000 a year to get going. And that did not seem like a good deal to me. So I decided to do an MBA instead. And I hid out there for a couple of years, really enjoyed myself. I got to teach business in the former Soviet Union, and I ran the high tech and new media club. I did all sorts of fun things there, but eventually I was going to have to get a job. I eventually graduated. And I decided to take a job with a small business consulting firm based out of Toronto, Canada, but they were working all over North America. And I thought it would be almost like a paid internship. Like I'd get to see a whole bunch of different jobs and I'd get to see a whole bunch of different industries and I'd figure it out from there. But it turned out that that work was actually the work I really enjoyed doing. I loved going into these companies and helping them with things that for me were pretty easy, but for them, they were revolutionary. They'd never seen those things before. And, a lot of the companies that we work with, the leaders are, they're the doers, right? They were really great individual contributors somewhere and thought, oh, I could do this for myself. But they didn't necessarily go to business school and they don't necessarily have a business background. And so what we could do is bring that business education to them in their environment, like an MBA in a box almost, just exactly the things that they need to learn and know more. And it was really, really impactful work. The changes would happen relatively quickly and they'd be able to see the results right away. And what I also liked about it is I got to leave. Once the stuff was in place, it was over to them to run their business. And we got to go on to the next one and the next project. And I enjoyed the project aspect of the work. I also really liked going back a year later and seeing how much progress they'd made without us, just from having those systems in place. So it turned out that that job that I took, that internship became my career.
Hmm. Well, I love that story. I can see definitely why you would want to transition because $40,000 a
Yeah.
year doesn't seem very appealing, especially in today's market.
Yeah.
And then going and working in the Soviet Union, that sounds very fascinating.
Yeah. It was cool. Yeah.
I imagine. I imagine it really was. I'm curious. I mean, it sounds like all of the things that you've done are really helpful for businesses and companies and helping them to strategize. And I think a lot of the people that I talk to who are entrepreneurs, you're right, they don't have a background in business. They don't really know where to begin. How did you kind of make this transition even for yourself? Because now you have your company and your business, and you had started out over here working with smaller businesses. How did this take place for you?
Yeah, well, again, it's an interesting question. So I worked at that company that from that job that I took right out of school, and I did that for 8 years and rose up the ranks and enjoyed it a lot. I was running all of the consulting by the time I left, but I fell pregnant with my first child and came to my senses and realized that I did not want to be traveling all over North America anymore. I wanted to be in Vancouver, where I'm from. I still loved the work though. This was the job I wanted. It just, the company wasn't there. And so I had to start my own. And so my husband and I moved back to Vancouver. He was working, this was in 2008. He was working for an investment bank. They set him up in a packaged office here. He was going to grow the practice. But 2008 was kind of a tough time for investment banking, and he lost that job really quickly. So there I was with my baby, and had to get working. And I looked everywhere for a job doing the kind of consulting work that I liked, but I couldn't find any companies here that were doing it, anything that would allow me to not have to travel as much as I had before. So I decided to start my own and went out and started making some phone calls and grinding and getting a lot of rejections. But eventually I got one project. And once I had one project, that meant I could get another project and so on. And here we are today. And I've had lots of projects. And a lot of people have worked for me and also gotten a taste of this drug that I love so much.
I love that you refer to it as kind of like this drug that you love so much. That's
It
amazing.
is. It's a bit addictive. I mean, once you can give results to people, it really is a bit addictive. You want more and more of that feeling.
So very true. I very well spoken. You mentioned in there too. I mean, yes, I remember 2008 and it was a very hard year. And you're saying that you had a baby and you're going out and you're trying to launch this company and you're getting rejected. How did you handle that? How did you handle all of that? Because those are big life things that you're
Mm.
talking about, on top of trying to just put yourself out there. in that
Oh
way?
my gosh, it's not easy. And I have so much respect for people who do. Um, the way I was sort of breaking into the business, breaking into get the network, I guess, is I would do some mystery shopping on trade show floors. So, and then report back and tell what the best practices were. And the goal was to go in and say, okay, here's how your booth did. But I felt like a complete imposter. I mean, I'd not really done trade shows myself. And so going in and giving these grades on how people did seemed, well, it was just hard. And I would make these phone calls, and of 100 phone calls that I would make, only 3 people would even speak to me. I'd be blocked at every other turn, and of those 3, only 2 were interested in me giving them this free service that didn't cost them anything. And even of those 2 that were interested, only 1 would actually show up to the meeting to get the results. And I was going to them for the meeting, which means that half of the people were like hiding out in their own office, pretending that they weren't there after I've done this work for them for free. So it was really, really a hard slog. And I have a lot of respect for people who cold call their way to their businesses.
Yeah, I mean, that is a big way that I think most business owners right now are having to kind of go through those motions, and it takes a lot of perseverance and self-talk and mindset and overcoming.
Yeah.
What was it that you kind of told yourself, or how did you kind of coach yourself through that?
I made it not a choice. So that's and that is a mental trick that works for me and not for everyone. But if it's a choice, I won't do it. So
Mhm,
it just wasn't a choice. Somebody needed to work in our family. Somebody needed a job, and that was the job I knew how to do. And
mhm,
it wasn't, so it just wasn't a choice. I just had to go out there and do it. And when people said no, or when they didn't show up, it was hard. It was really hard. And
mhm.
I can't tell you that I'm the most optimistic person. Like, there were some dark times for sure. Um, but I didn't have a choice. In my mind, I didn't have a choice.
Well, I definitely like and appreciate the rawness and the realness there, because I think sometimes, we have a dream, we're going to launch and it feels exciting, and then there's kind of reality that starts to set in, that this is actually a lot of work, and we have to face everything that we're trying to do, and also face that, I think that sometimes we're learning as we go, and it's like that Dunning-Kruger effect, where we start to
Yeah.
recognize there's a lot of things that we may not know, that we thought maybe even we were better at
Hmm.
than we were.
Hmm.
And you talking about having a baby while doing this, I feel like there's nothing more than having a young one that you're trying to care for. That's like this reminder right in your face of reality.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You do it for them, right? I mean, that's got to be the reason that humans have children, because there can't be another reason. It's so hard. But you do it for them. It's not for yourself, and that gets you can get you through a lot.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I definitely can relate to that with having a young one, and completely changing jobs, at least at that moment in my
Mm.
life. How did you kind of like, was there a breakthrough that started to happen for you that took place? How did you start to start seeing that success happen for you?
Yeah, well, it was the first project. We finally got the first project, and it was a machine shop. It was a family-run business. They had 2 sons, and the father was still there. And again, it was 2008, so they were going through some really significant financial challenges.
Mhm,
And I knew what needed to be done there. So while when it comes to Dunning-Kruger particularly, sometimes we can doubt ourselves when we actually are the experts, because we know how much we don't know, and that can also be an uncomfortable place.
mhm,
But in that environment, I knew I felt myself. I felt like, oh yeah, I know how to do this stuff. This stuff's okay. And so because I got that little taste of it, then I could go back and do the things that I didn't know that well, because I would hard win those skills just like I'd hard won the skills that allowed me to do the work. So it was
mhm.
a great reinforcement for me. Yes, you are capable. Yes, you can do things. Yes, you know stuff. Yes, it's worth it for people to pay you to do this.
Mm. That's so true. I think sometimes it's like I can do hard things. I know I've told
Mm,
myself that before.
yeah,
Like, we can
exactly,
do hard things.
exactly. Yeah. And I remember, my son, that my eldest, the one that was just a baby back then. I remember having a conversation with him about some difficult challenges that he was going through, and he said, "Don't worry, we know how to do hard things." And I
Mhm.
just was like, "Wow, that's amazing. You're such a smart kid." But it's really true. We do. Like that's resilience, right? The more hard things you do, the better you are at doing hard things.
I love it when our kids can become our teachers at the same time. It feels
Yeah,
like a full circle moment when those moments take
totally.
place.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more too. So now you're helping businesses. What do you feel like, what's the thing that most people are coming to you for?
Um, well, there's all sorts of different issues. What I would say most people come to us for is a difficult problem that has been driving them crazy, but they can't figure out how to solve it. And they've tried a whole bunch of different things. They've tried whatever they know, and it's just not working. Those are the areas, they're usually successful businesses. They're usually successful people. They've done a lot of right things, but there's this roadblock in the way, and it often has to do with perspective. They just can't see it from a different angle or from an angle that would be more helpful to them. And that's where we can really help is by giving them alternate perspectives. We work in all sorts of different industries from DNA manufacturers to funeral homes and everything in between. And so sometimes the practices that other industries or other companies embrace can be they just need to learn about those things, and that's enough sometimes to knock them off of where they're currently standing, their current perspective, and shift it into a new perspective that can help them get out of whatever the roadblock is that they have in front of them.
Mm. Definitely running a business, there's just so many facets to that.
Mm.
Where do you feel that most businesses need the most support?
I really like that question. And so when we're generalizing to, most businesses, the one thing I know for sure is that all of the good and all of the bad in that business, you can trace it with a direct line to the leader. It's the leader that sets the tone and charts the way. And there are definitely a lot of contributors in there as well. Don't get me wrong, but there's a direct line to the leader. And leaders often feel like they need to know everything, and they don't. And they don't know everything, and they don't need to know everything, but they do need help. They need sounding boards. They need people around them, boards of directors or advisory boards or just advisors, like consultants like myself, to reduce some of the loneliness and be a thought partner and help them see around some of the corners that they can't see themselves.
Mm. I really love that answer coming from leadership coaching too. I love that answer.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that too sometimes there's like a couple things that come up for me when you say that too is number one is this feeling that if we don't know everything, that we're somehow a failure,
Mm.
that, maybe we're doing the wrong thing and we shouldn't even be pursuing this at all. What would you say?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's so funny because if there's nobody who would stand in front of people and say, "I know everything." You wouldn't say that because it's ridiculous. So then why do you think you have to know everything? If you wouldn't even say that, it's just, again, it's a perspective thing. Of course, you don't know everything. The most important thing you can be is curious, and find these other things that you might not have known. So, I do find that a very weird sort of phenomenon with humans that we would never say we know everything out loud, and yet we feel like we should know everything on the inside.
Mm-hmm. Very well stated. Yes, I think it's really interesting, this juxtaposition of how we judge ourselves, but at the same time, we would never claim these things.
Hmm.
And another thing I think that comes up too for people is why would I hire somebody else? Maybe I can just reach out to family members, or I have a support system inside of my
Yeah.
family unit. How do you address that as a I don't
Well,
know, maybe a I
well,
can't
first of
write
all,
for it.
it's a legitimate strategy, first of all. Like
Mhm,
it's not the wrong thing to do, it's the right thing to do.
mhm,
But still, you're only getting a limited perspective,
mhm,
even when it's from your family. So, assuming your family cares about you, I'm going to make that assumption because most do, and they want to do what's in your best interest. They want to help you in the best possible way. Even then, it's such a narrow viewpoint. They're your family. And so having those outside perspectives can be so valuable. And you can get that in a lot of different ways. You can go to conferences and you can read books and listen to podcasts. There are all sorts of ways to get exposed to different perspectives. But I think when you find the right thinking partner, it's again, it's a bit addictive. It's hard to walk away from that. You know that that person can help you with those things. Why wouldn't you try it? Like, why wouldn't you make that attempt? And if it doesn't work for you, okay, but why wouldn't you? What is the fear or the roadblock that gets in the way?
mhm. I think that comes up too sometimes, especially with new businesses when, maybe they feel like they just don't have the finances to afford hiring someone to either be that thought partner with them or that
Mhm.
expert or advisor.
Right. Yeah,
What do you feel that's costing them?
yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Is it an expense or is it an investment? And for me personally, I would invest in myself every day of the week. And so because I think that that's the best place for me to invest. And I think that having teachers and education and coaches and consultants, having good ones, that should pay more than pay for itself. And it should more than pay for itself right away. It shouldn't take a long
Mhm.
time to figure out whether it was worthwhile or not. In our business, we don't even sign contracts with our clients. If they're not happy, they shouldn't pay. If they can't see value, they shouldn't pay. We don't want them to pay. We don't charge hourly, we charge by value. And if they can't see the value isn't there. So that's one way to address it is yes, you're going to have to invest your time to try things, but you don't necessarily have to invest your money. Uh, we're that sure that it's helpful.
Mm. That's pretty bold. I don't know a lot of business owners who necessarily offer that as a guarantee.
Hmm.
But I also love that idea because I think it really provides that sense of trust and assurance that you're there to support them in whatever their needs are.
Hmm.
What do you feel has been for you? I know you mentioned earlier, like it's kind of addicting when you start helping people. And I loved how you mentioned too, like you would invest in yourself because when you see the value in it, it's
Yeah.
hard. You wanna help people, and I also love I'm the same way. I start getting addicted, and I always tell myself, I'm gonna just not sign up for one more thing. It's
Yeah.
just what do you feel has been what's is there something that stands out to you as the greatest reward that doing this work and kind of pushing into even your business and facing some of those hard things, what's been the greatest reward for you?
Oh, honestly, it is seeing those people again. It is going back and seeing those clients and where they've taken things. I have so much pride in them, in their abilities and their efforts. And I just love that I was able to be a part of that journey in some way. I really enjoy seeing the ones the old ones that I don't work with so much anymore. That first client that I was talking about, that machine shop, we had a party a number of years ago, pre-COVID, some sort of, I think it was a Christmas party. Anyway, one of the sons in that business, who's now in his 40s, but he came to the party to say hi, and I was just so delighted to see him and hear about everything that he'd been through and all of what the business was doing. And he'd gone away to Europe for a while and then come back. And it just feels great to know that you were helpful in someone's journey. You didn't do much, but you did something that was meaningful. And I just love that feeling.
Mm. It is the best, and I think it's amazing when you can see and it's not I don't know, it doesn't even feel like me, it's just that you can feel like you're a part of something and someone else's transformation and success. I think that brings so much meaning and fulfillment, to the work. What do you, I know you have a lot of resources and ways that you support people. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Well, the best way is out of my website, www.bellrock.ca, or they can find me on LinkedIn. Those are really the best channels to reach out. And we do all sorts of things like management training where they get one-on-one coaching from us. We do strategic planning facilitation, team building, all sorts of different things. And they can find some great resources on our website.
Hmm. Where do you feel like, what would you suggest for people kind of starting out? Did you have any recommendations that you might give for
People
someone
starting out in their career,
in their business? If they're
in
wanting
their
to go
business,
start a business, what would you recommend?
begin with the end in mind. So think about where you want this thing to be in 5 years and 10 years. You're going to be wrong, by the way. Whatever your prediction is, things never work out that way. But that's not the point of making the prediction. The point is to have some sort of North Star that you're moving toward that will help guide your decision making and your processes as you move forward.
Hmm. So true. So very true. I think we sometimes give up before we've really even started because it isn't what we imagined it would be.
Yeah, no, that's another piece of advice is take the first step.
Mhm.
Don't just sit and think about it and ruminate. Nothing will, it's got to get out of your head for it to provide some sort of value into the world. And you kind of owe it to the world to provide it that value. So just take a step.
Absolutely. Well, if you were to kind of give, someone who maybe is considering how to start their business and they're wondering, who should they invest in and what are what's the biggest thing? What would you tell them?
I would say that often when they're starting their business, they people will not spend money on good financial help. They'll try to get away with doing the bookkeeping themselves, or they'll try to get away with just a bookkeeper and not a controller, or just a controller and not a CFO. And I think if you don't already have that expertise personally, paying for that financial expertise should immediately pay dividends. And so having a controller, for example, somebody who's controlling the money, if you're starting a business to make money, make sure that somebody is there watching the money. And you're going to be busy doing all of the other things. So make sure you've got really strong financial advice. And I don't mean your accountant that's going to figure out your taxes. I mean managerial advice, managerial financial controls.
Really excellent, excellent advice. I think that we all come in and we think, yes, I can do all of it. And then we find ourselves in the weeds.
Yeah, and that's one of those Dunning-Kruger things, like you don't know what you don't know. If you don't have expertise, you're missing out on a lot. It's a big deal. So
Mhm.
go hire it.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on, sharing with us about the work that you do, how you support and help people, and then also just that your story. The story is that, you were able to really push through because I think so many women in general, we do have big ideas and we're trying to escape sometimes a situation that's not a right fit. And we don't know really where to turn or how to start, and we talk ourselves out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, just get started. Just take that step.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Tara. I really have enjoyed our conversation. I appreciate you coming on, and we will make sure that everyone can find you, reach out, connect, and find you on your website. We'll put all of that into the show notes.
Well, that's great. Thanks so much for having me. This was really fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning into the Hello You Show. It's been a pleasure to have you with us on this journey today. If you found value in our conversation and want to support the show, please take a moment to like, follow, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd also deeply appreciate it if you could leave us a review. Your feedback not only helps us grow, but also enables others seeking inspiration and authenticity to discover our community. Until next time, keep embracing your story with purpose.